With Anthony Edwards, Jayson Tatum, and Luka Doncic all popping off in the 2024 playoffs, there's been a lot of conversation surrounding the face of the league, who's the next guy, if any of these three guys have what it takes. And I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on who I think the next face of the league could be and why it largely doesn't matter. I know that sounds kind of oxymoronic. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but I don't know, like throughout my time being an NBA fan, I just never really felt comfortable discussing like who the face of the league is, and I'll get into that later on in the video, but here are the pros and cons for every single potential face of the NBA. And before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. All support on the videos is appreciated. Okay, let's start off with Jayson Tatum. One of the things that Tatum benefits from a lot is that he's in a big market. The Boston Celtics, they're one of the storied franchises in NBA history. Like, I could go all day talking about their history, and Tatum has led this team to a lot of team success. They've made 2 NBA finals, multiple Eastern Conference finals. Second thing he's got really going for him is that he is like more of a casual friendly player. I feel like if you could go up to any random person on the street and you ask them, hey, name an NBA player that's not LeBron, KD, Steph, I feel like Jayson Tatum has got to be like the first 3 names that people think of, right? I mean, he's relatively known. I mean, a lot of people know him from the South because he did go to Duke, and with the sponsorships that he's done, he's shown that he's very marketable. Another thing that Tatum has is that he has a very aesthetically pleasing game. Casual fans are more drawn to the tween hezzy stuff. He's also a tall forward, so he kind of has that like Paul George, Tracy McGrady archetype that's very popular among like a lot of casual basketball fans. And then lastly, he's exceptionally skilled, right? He's a skilled scorer, he's a really good passer, great defensive player, the whole 9 yards. And the only cons that Tatum has is that he doesn't have the best reputation in terms of like narrative stuff. A lot of people don't think that he's really that guy. Like, a lot of people think that Jaylen Brown is better than him. A lot of people think that he's a fake superstar, this and that. And then the other thing is that he's not that charismatic. Like, when you think of star players who have charisma, you think of Kobe, you think of MJ. Jayson Tatum, he's more like reserved, right? He's more of like the guy that's gonna give you the predictable answer after a post-game interview. But the thing is, he's not like the other side of the spectrum either. Like, he's not like Kawhi where he's like super awkward. And that's like what makes people like Kawhi as a personality, is just that he's super awkward and he's unintentionally funny. Next up is Luka Doncic. To me, I feel like Luka Doncic 100% has an argument to be a face of the league, even with the whole European thing working against him. I mean, the guy has a super entertaining game, aesthetically pleasing. The guy can tween hezzy. He could break your ankles and then step back for 3, no problem. He has that like LeBron type archetype where it's like he's a versatile passer. He's also really great at scoring, and his great scoring ability and his great passing ability go hand in hand. He's a statistical anomaly for his age. Like, I think in the 2020 playoffs, Luka Doncic was the only one ever in NBA history at his age to put up the numbers that he was putting up in that series against the Clippers. And if we're being real, Luka is an underrated trash talker, bro. After he hit that 3 against Rudy Gobert, he was talking crazy to him. He was saying like, oh, you can't guard me, this and that. He had some choice words for him, and it made that 3 that he hit on Rudy just even more colder, right? Like, Luka Doncic is that one guy on the court that's gonna say some slick shit and he can get away with it because he'll cook you on the other end. And the only con that Luka has is he's also not that charismatic, and I just think a lot of that has to do with Luka not growing up in like the American basketball system, in the American basketball culture, where we kind of embrace trash talk a lot more than Europeans do. Europeans just kind of like to let their game do the talking, which I respect. But in the States, trash talk is like a staple of basketball. But Luka definitely has his moments, I'm not gonna lie. The reason why I think Luka does have the potential to be the face of the league, simply because his talent is just otherworldly. Like, I feel like charisma is like one of those things that really isn't gonna hurt you that much in these conversations. And also, the media has a certain bias against European players. Like, let's just admit it. Like, the fact that ESPN First Take was having this conversation like not that long ago, right? And they completely snubbed Luka Doncic from this conversation. They were bringing up names like Ja, Anthony Edwards, who I'm going to mention later, SGA, which aren't terrible picks. Like, don't get me wrong, I think SGA and Ant also have great arguments to be faces of the league. But bro, Luka Doncic is putting up better numbers than both of them right now, and he just got completely snubbed snubbed from that conversation. There isn't another player in this league at Luka's age just putting up the numbers that he's putting up. And then the last argument you could make, which I don't really agree with, is that Luka hasn't really established himself as a top 3 player in the league yet. I think Luka's a top 3 player, but some people think that he has to capture a championship before he can be put in those conversations. I don't know what those people are smoking, but hey man, to each their own. Next up is Anthony Edwards, and this guy has 100% won me over. Anthony Edwards is one of my favorite players in the league. Like, I can't not like this guy. The dude has extremely like contagious amounts of charisma. Like, the dude has crazy like out of pocket clips. He's a really competitive player. He talks a lot of trash. He says a lot of funny things. Like, I remember in the post-game interview with Kat, he referenced like the whole after all that thing. And then not to mention that this guy is extremely athletic. He has a very entertaining, aesthetically pleasing game, and he plays it with an edge that a lot of young players in this league don't really have. Like, I can just hear Anthony Edwards talk about like his process going into the season, how he wants to improve, and I feel like that's just a drive that a lot of younger players in the league just don't have. And Anthony Edwards is blossoming into a superstar very early into his career. Shoot, I might make a whole video about how Anthony Edwards has become like low-key my second or third favorite player. I love you, Ja, but he might be coming for your spot if you don't lock in. And then last but not least, SGA. What can I say about SGA that I haven't already said about either Luka or Anthony Edwards? SGA has a very aesthetically pleasing game. He's like a pure hooper. He likes to operate in that mid-range area. He likes to get those tween hezzies going. And SGA has attracted like a huge like younger NBA audience, right? Like, these fans like to talk about like SGA's fashion and like, you know, he has so much aura, this and that. Like, even my cousin, he's like a big SGA fan. Really, when you mix in the bag talk, when you mix in, you know, him off the court, and then when you mix in like his aura, as the kids like to say, SGA has a very compelling argument for being the next face of the league. He does put up very impressive numbers, and he's on a very young, entertaining Thunder team that I could see low-key taking over the league in a few years. And if I'm being honest, SGA nor Anthony Edwards have any cons here. Like, the only slight con I would give to SGA maybe is that he might have a little bit more to prove in a playoff setting, but the guy is still very young. He's the same age as like Luka, and obviously having the same expectations for SGA as Luka is like ridiculous, right? Luka is an anomaly. And then here are some honorable mentions that I had. Ja Morant, I feel like he could have been a potential face of the league if all this off-court drama never happened. And as much as it hurts me as a Ja Morant stan, actually I don't really consider myself a stan of anybody really, but I'm a really big Ja Morant fan. It hurts knowing the implications of this whole Ja Morant off-court situation, and it sucks, but this is just stuff that comes with being the face of the league. Like, you have to be, not necessarily, you don't have to have like a squeaky clean record or anything, but I don't know, man, Ja Morant's reputation really isn't the best right now. And also, he barely even played in the 2023-24 season, so he has a lot to prove next season, because it feels like a lot of people just forgot about him. And then this next one, I'm grouping all these guys together, guys like LaMelo, Trey, and Zion. I feel like with these guys, either none of them are good enough to be the face of the league, meaning like I don't think any of these guys are like top 3 to top 5 players. And to me, a lot of what's holding these guys back is either their team situation or, in Zion's case, their lack of work ethic, bro. Like, I'm sorry, I understand Zion has been injured and he's been missing a lot of time, but bro, even then, I just get the vibe of Zion that he likes to coast off of his athleticism and how big he is. I don't think the guy really has a desire to get that much better. He honestly feels like a Shaq to me. Like, Shaq, he kind of had that whole thing going on. And with Zion, if the injuries keep piling up, listen, man, I don't know if I have much hope left if he's going to ever reach his potential. And then guys like Giannis, Jokic, Joel Embiid, I feel like these 3 guys kind of missed their window to be the face of the league. They kind of came in towards like the latter half of the 2010s, which kind of felt like a transitory period, if we're being real. Granted, all these guys are still great, but I think they missed their window. And then obviously guys like LeBron, Curry, KD, like all those guys are on their way out. But you're probably wondering, why does it say it doesn't matter in the title? Why do I think that the face of the league doesn't matter? Well, let me preface it by saying, obviously to the NBA, stuff like this matters because it's their branding, right? It's how they get people to watch the product. But I feel like when fans have these conversations, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like at the end of the day, the fans are gonna like who they like. But the NBA really only cares about having a face. It attracts new fans or not. It gets the league more sponsorships, it makes them more profitable, and in some cases like Victor Wembanyama or Luka Doncic, it helps them expand globally. But the reason why I don't like when fans have these conversations is because I feel like these are just things that just naturally happen. I feel like when LeBron finally took over as like the undisputed face of the league, when Kobe's reign over the NBA was over, it was just kind of like a natural transfer of power in a sense. I feel like the only reason why we have these conversations in like a post-dominant LeBron era is because LeBron is still dominant. And you can even make an argument that LeBron is still the face of the league. But LeBron is no longer consistently in like championship contender mode, right? I know some people had hope for the 2023 Lakers, but let's be real, they weren't touching the NBA Finals. And to me, that's perfectly fine. But clearly with this year's playoffs, we're seeing a new crop rise to the top, rhyming accidentally. We're seeing new stars ascend to like the face of the league basically. And honestly, it's only a matter of time when we add one more to that list with Victor Wembanyama. But again, I don't like when we have these conversations because I think this is just something that should just happen naturally. I feel like these face of the league conversations, a lot of them are very forced. Like the one on ESPN First Take was super forced. Obviously, to be the face, it takes superstar ability. It takes your team being really good because it's going to keep you relevant. And it takes being liked by a big percentage of reasonable NBA fans. Not the stands, but more so the casual fans, right? So guys like Edwards, Alexander, and Doncic, right? Those guys are very liked by casuals. But the real culprit in these conversations is the media because they're trying to find a new golden boy. For like a decade, it was LeBron. For a little bit in between, it was Steph Curry. And then maybe for like a year or two, it was Giannis, Kawhi, or Embiid. And they mainly do this by selling these narratives like, oh, X player should leave for a bigger market because they could care less to promote that player if their team is relevant or not. Or they'll just flat out say or insinuate that X player is boring. And this mostly relates to their personality or charisma. This hurts the media's pockets because boring personalities don't dramatize the game and they make money off of the dramatized version of the game. That's why you hear so much of the tweet that Kevin Durant made where he said NBA fans don't like anything about the NBA. The same idea can be extrapolated towards the media as well, which is why the media has a strong bias against European players because most of them, they can't really market them that well except for like Luka Doncic and maybe Giannis, right? Like obviously the NBA loves having them around, but media companies like ESPN and First Take, when they're talking about them, they can't really get viewership like that because their audience base is in America. And if they haven't made it clear as day by now, their agenda is to promote mostly American players. And then the last problem I have is this conversation is hardly even about basketball anymore. Like, yes, the face of the league conversation is not entirely about the basketball ability itself. There are outside factors that partake in it, like a player's personality, the stuff that some players do to express themselves, this and that, the narratives around the game, the way that the game is dramatized, right? But to me, all of that outside stuff should never supersede a player's ability on the court or how great they are at what they do, because the basketball itself is why these players are popular in the first place. But that'll be it for this video. This was a long one and I kind of just freestyled it off the dome. If you like videos like this and you want to see more of them, make sure to subscribe. More videos will be on the way soon, and I'm out. Peace.